I still vividly remember that Christmas Eve. It was a bitterly cold night in Winnetka, with snowflakes falling as if the entire sky was emptying itself onto the affluent town. Our family's mansion stood on a tree-lined street ablaze with twinkling Christmas lights, the roaring fireplace inside casting warmth all the way to the porch. To outsiders, it must have looked like we were living in a dream of wealth and happiness. But only I knew that beneath the glittering facade, our family was rotting day by day. My name is Porter, 35 years old, the marketing director of our family business, a packaged food company founded by my grandfather in the 1970s. People often say I'm lucky to have been born with everything: money, a career, and a prominent family name. But no one understands that I'm like a pawn on the family chessboard, where power and greed reign supreme. That Christmas Eve, the party was held at our family's mansion, a sprawling estate worth hundreds of millions with white marble walls, sparkling crystal chandeliers hanging from high ceilings, and classic paintings lining every wall. In that space, the scent of cedarwood and red wine mingled, creating an almost suffocating air of opulence. Guests, distant relatives, and business partners gathered in droves, their laughter and chatter echoing through the grand hall. But I stood alone in a corner, quietly holding a glass of wine, watching each family member with a heavy heart. My father, Elias, the powerful patriarch with sleek silver hair and an expensive gray suit paired with a bold red tie, was laughing and mingling with guests, acting as if nothing in the world could trouble him. My mother, Eleanor, tall and slender in an emerald velvet gown adorned with dazzling diamond jewelry, stood by his side, her eyes briefly meeting mine with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Then there was Knox, my younger brother, 5 years my junior, always considered the family's golden child. Dressed in a sleek black suit, champagne glass in hand, he walked alongside his wife, Clara, a beautiful but cold woman with eyes sharp as knives. I approached the banquet table, picked up a glass of red wine, and took a sip, trying to quell the unease churning in my stomach. "Porter," my mother's voice cut through my thoughts. She approached, her face radiant but her eyes betraying a hint of worry. "Are you all right? You look a bit pale." "Just a little tired, Mom," I replied, forcing a weak smile. "Work's been busy, you know." She nodded, but her gaze remained probing. "Don't overwork yourself, dear. The family needs you healthy." Her words sounded sincere, but I couldn't help noticing the way she emphasized family. To her, family always came first, but sometimes I wondered if the family she spoke of truly included me, or if it was just the name of the company emblazoned on snack boxes sold in every supermarket. The feast began. We gathered around the table, the crystal chandeliers casting a glow that made the food look even more enticing. Golden roasted turkey, creamy mashed potatoes with gravy, and the family's traditional pudding. I sat across from Knox, who was regaling our Uncle George, an old business partner of my father's, with a story about deer hunting. Clara, Knox's wife, sat beside him, her crimson lips curved in a perfect smile as she gently stroked the golden hair of their daughter, Lily. I tried not to stare too long, but I couldn't miss the smugness in Knox's posture, shoulders squared as if he were the center of the universe. "Porter," my father's voice boomed from the head of the table, interrupting my thoughts. "Have you reviewed this quarter's financial report?" The table fell silent for a moment. I felt every pair of eyes turn toward me. My father rarely brought up business on occasions like this unless something was gravely wrong. I set my wine glass down, striving to keep my voice steady. "Yes, Father. Revenue is stable, but raw material costs have risen due to inflation. We're still managing." "Stable?" His tone was sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. "The company is facing a cash flow shortage, Porter. We don't have enough to cover year-end bonuses for the employees." I frowned, caught off guard. "A shortage? Last month's report showed we had a surplus for payroll." "That was last month," my father said, his voice lowering but his eyes sharp as ever. "Things have changed. We need a solution immediately." I glanced at Knox, hoping he'd speak up. As the CFO, he should know more about this than anyone, But he just sat there, sipping his wine, his face calm as if he were watching an unrelated drama unfold. Heat rose to my face. "So what's the solution, Father?" I asked, keeping my tone even. He looked straight at me, his gaze unwavering. "Your penthouse in downtown Chicago, sell it. $800,000 will cover the shortfall." My heart skipped a beat. That penthouse was something I'd spent a decade saving for, my refuge after long, exhausting days. The only asset I could truly call my own. "Father," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "that's my personal property. I bought it with my own money, not the company's." "You work for the family business," he cut in, his voice like steel. "Everything you have belongs to this family." Anger flared in my chest, but I fought to keep it in check. I turned to Knox, who remained silent, his lips pressed together as if suppressing a smile. "What about Knox? His mansion in Evanston is worth $2 million. Why not ask him to sell?" Knox let out a dry, mocking laugh. "Are you serious, Porter? I have a wife and 2 kids. They need a stable home. You're living alone in that lavish penthouse. What do you even need it for?" "Stable?" I snapped, unable to hold back any longer. "You're talking about stability when the company's in trouble? You're the CFO, Knox. How did you not see this shortfall coming?" "Enough, Porter." My mother's voice sliced through, sharp as a blade, yet outwardly calm. "Knox has a family to care for. You can't compare like that." I looked at her, feeling as if I'd been stabbed in the chest. She always did this. Always took Knox's side, as if I weren't her son, as if I were just another employee in their company. I turned to my father, hoping for some shred of fairness, but he only stared back, his eyes cold. "Father," I said, my voice low but firm, "if the company needs money, why not sell this mansion? It's worth at least $150 million. Even mortgaging it would solve everything." The room froze. The guests' whispers fell silent. My mother gasped, and Knox stared at me as if I'd committed a cardinal sin. My father shot to his feet, the wooden chair scraping loudly against the floor. He stormed toward me, his face flushed with rage. Before I could say another word, he raised his hand and slapped me hard across the face, the sound echoing in the silent room. Pain seared my cheek. My body swaying, nearly collapsing onto the marble floor. I staggered, dizziness blurring everything around me. Then my father's voice rang out, icy and deliberate, each word like a knife. "You insolent fool, you're fired, Porter," he snarled, his face as cold as if I were a stranger. "Get out, now!" I stood there, stunned, feeling as if the world had crumbled beneath me. The stares from the guests, my mother, Knox, Clara, all pierced me like daggers. Knox remained seated, a smug smile curling his lips as if he'd won a game I didn't even know I was playing. I said nothing. I turned and walked out of the dining room through the long hallway lined with family portraits. Knox's laughter echoed behind me, mingling with the murmurs of the crowd. As I pushed open the front door, the frigid Christmas Eve air hit my face, soothing the sting on my cheek but doing nothing to calm the storm raging in my heart. I stepped into my car, started the engine and drove away, leaving the twinkling lights of the Winnetka mansion behind. The car glided through the snow-covered streets, the dim glow of streetlights reflecting off the windshield, pulling me into a haze of scattered thoughts. The sting on my cheek lingered, but what weighed heavier on my heart wasn't my father's slap. It was his furious words. "This house is mine. Even if your grandfather loved you, it's not yours to decide." Those words cut like a blade, not just because they dismissed me, but because they stirred a long-buried memory. I suddenly recalled a summer afternoon 20 years ago, when I was just 15. My grandfather, with his white hair and eyes bright as fire, led me into the library of the Winnetka mansion. He pointed to the oak-paneled walls, the towering bookshelves filled with old tomes, and said in his warm, steady voice, "Porter, one day, all of this will be yours. This isn't just a house. It's the family legacy. Protect it and don't let anyone take it from you." His words etched themselves into my mind, a sacred promise. But now my father's words made me wonder. Was that just a hazy memory of a boy? Or was something being hidden from me? I drove to my penthouse in downtown Chicago, the one place I'd always considered a sanctuary amid the storms of family life. Perched on the 32nd floor, it offered a sweeping view of the city, the twinkling lights of skyscrapers like scattered stars. I sank onto the sofa, clutching a cold cup of coffee, and stared out the window. Christmas Eve, meant to be a time of togetherness, had instead carved a deep wound in my pride. Knox's smug smile and my mother's biased gaze replayed in my mind like a slow-motion film. But above all, my father's words echoed relentlessly, a puzzle without an answer. I stood and walked to my study, where I kept an old safe I rarely opened. Inside was a wooden box my grandfather had given me just before he passed away 7 years ago. I vividly remembered that moment. Him lying in a hospital bed, his voice weak but resolute, handing me the box and saying, "Keep it safe, Porter. When you're ready, you'll understand." I had nodded, but back then I was a 28-year-old fresh MBA graduate, drowning in work at the family company. I stored the box in the safe, assuming it held mere keepsakes I'd look at once the grief of losing him subsided. But life swept me away. The company, endless meetings, pressure from my parents, and their favoritism toward Knox made me forget the box. I didn't want to face memories of my grandfather because thinking of him reminded me of the loneliness of no longer belonging to my family. Tonight, for the first time in 7 years, I opened the safe and retrieved the wooden box. Its polished oak surface was engraved with my grandfather's name, James Hammond, in intricate detail. I lifted the lid, my heart pounding as I saw the contents. A silver ring engraved with his name, a few handwritten letters in his familiar script, and a carefully folded stack of documents tied with a leather cord. I wasn't sure why I'd kept them, perhaps to hold on to a piece of him, the only person in my family who ever made me feel valued. I flipped through the papers, my grandfather's handwritten notes detailing the family business and plans he'd shared with me as a child. Then I found a document that stopped me cold. A copy of my grandfather's will drafted 7 years ago, just before his death. I read each line, my heart racing. The will stated clearly, "The mansion at 1427 Oakwood Lane, Winnetka, Illinois, along with all related assets, is to be transferred to my grandson, Porter James Hammond, to manage and own outright." I thought I'd misread it. I read it again, then again, each word searing into my mind. The mansion, where my parents lived, where tonight's party was held, was mine. But why didn't I know? Why did my father claim it was his? I sank into the chair, my breath uneven. 7 years ago, when my grandfather died, my parents quickly moved into the mansion. They called it family property, saying he wanted them to manage it to preserve the legacy. I didn't question it, too busy carving out my place in the company, trying to prove I was worthy of the family name. I trusted them, believed they'd do the right thing. But now, with the will in my hands, I realized I'd been deceived. They hadn't just taken the house, they'd hidden the truth, letting me live in their shadow, working tirelessly for a company that never truly valued me. Anger mixed with confusion surged in my chest. My hands trembling, I called Patricia, my personal lawyer and a trusted friend from college. Her voice came through the phone, calm but sharp. "Porter, calling me at 11 p.m. on Christmas Eve? This better be serious." "Patricia," I said, my voice hoarse with emotion, "I found my grandfather's will. The Winnetka mansion, it was left to me. But my parents are living there, and I think they forged documents." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure?" Patricia asked, her tone now deadly serious. "Forging a will is a major accusation, Porter. What evidence do you have?" "I have a copy of the will," I replied, my eyes fixed on the paper, "and I need you to help me verify it. If my parents did something, I want to take back what's mine." Patricia agreed to meet me the next morning at her office in downtown Chicago. I hung up but couldn't sleep. All night I sat at my desk, rereading the will, searching for any clue to explain this. As dawn broke, pale light filtering through the window, a new resolve settled in me. I wouldn't let my parents or Knox manipulate me any longer. If the mansion was truly mine, I'd reclaim it. Not for the money, but for justice. For my grandfather's promise. The next morning, I arrived at Patricia's office, a small but elegant space filled with shelves of legal documents. Patricia, her brown hair neatly tied back and wearing thin-framed glasses, greeted me with a smile but a concerned look. "You look like you've been hit by a truck," she said, sliding a cup of coffee toward me. "Feels like it," I replied, sitting down and handing her the copy of the will. "This is what I found. What can we do?" Patricia read through the document, her brows furrowing as she turned each page. After a while, she looked up, her eyes sharp. "If what you're saying is true and this will is legitimate, your parents have committed a serious violation. But we'll need more concrete evidence, property transfer records, ownership deeds, and any documents related to the mansion's transfer after your grandfather's death." "Can you find them?" I asked, a mix of excitement and anxiety stirring within me. "I'll start right away," Patricia replied. "But Porter, you need to prepare yourself. If your parents really forged documents, this isn't just a legal issue. It could tear your family apart." "Family?" I let out a bitter laugh. "They tore it apart last night, Patricia. I'm just trying to take back what's mine." Over the next week, Patricia and her team dug into the legal records. I spent most of my time in my apartment, avoiding all contact with my family. Knox texted once, asking if I'd calmed down yet, but I didn't respond. Each day I checked my email, waiting for news from Patricia, my heart racing every time my phone buzzed. Finally, on a drizzly afternoon, Patricia called me to her office. When I walked in, she was seated behind her desk, a thick stack of documents in front of her. "Porter," she said, her voice low but firm, "I found proof. The Winnetka mansion was registered in your name per your grandfather's will. But shortly after his death, your parents submitted a forged will to the court, transferring ownership to themselves. I consulted a handwriting expert. The signature on the forged will doesn't match your grandfather's on other documents." I sat down, feeling the ground shift beneath me. "So they lied to me? For 7 years?" Patricia nodded, her eyes filled with empathy. "I'm sorry, Porter, but we have enough evidence to take this to court. If you want, I can start preparing the paperwork to reclaim ownership." I looked out the window where rain pattered against the skyscrapers. In that moment, I felt not just anger, but a profound ache. My parents, whom I'd trusted, had betrayed me, betrayed my grandfather's legacy, but I knew what I had to do. "Do it, Patricia," I said, my voice steady. "I want the house back. And I want them to know I know the truth." Patricia nodded, jotting something in her notebook. "Do you want me to arrange a meeting with your parents before we go to court? Sometimes confronting them directly can resolve things without litigation." I thought for a moment, then nodded. "Fine. But I want them to understand I'm not bluffing. They have 1 month to vacate the mansion or I'll sue." As I left Patricia's office, a new energy coursed through me. Not joy, but determination. I'd spent too long living in my family's shadow, enduring their favoritism and injustice. Now, with the truth in my hands, I wouldn't let them control me anymore. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. If my parents could forge a will, what other secrets were they hiding? A week after my meeting with Patricia, I stood before the wrought iron gates of the Winnetka mansion, my heart pounding as if it might burst from my chest. The snow had partially melted, leaving small, glistening puddles under the faint winter sunlight of Chicago. The house loomed before me, majestic like an ancient castle with its gray stone walls and stained glass windows catching the light. But today, it wasn't a place of childhood memories. It was a battlefield I had to face. In my hand, I held a folder of documents Patricia had prepared, a copy of my grandfather's will, property ownership records, and a handwriting analysis report proving the will my parents submitted to the court was forged. Each page felt like a bullet, and I knew I was about to enter an unforgiving war. I took a deep breath and pressed the buzzer. The low, resonant chime echoed like a warning. Margaret, our longtime housekeeper, opened the door, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of me. "Master Porter," she said, her voice soft but laced with concern. I didn't know you were coming. I need to see my parents, I replied, striving to keep my tone steady. Are they home? She nodded and led me into the grand foyer. The house retained its usual opulence, the marble fireplace, family portraits lining the walls, and the faint scent of oak from the polished floors. But today, everything felt cold, as if the house itself were bracing for a storm. Margaret disappeared through the door to the living room, and moments later my father, Elias, appeared. He wore a gray cashmere sweater, but his face was taut, his eyes narrowing as they met mine. Porter, he said, his voice icy. What are you doing here? After the way you left on Christmas Eve, I thought you'd have no shame to show your face again. I gripped the folder tightly, anger flaring but held in check. I'm here to talk about this mansion, I said, my voice even but sharp. And about grandfather's will. My mother, Eleanor, entered from behind, her pale blue silk dress swaying slightly. She looked at me, lips pressed tight, her eyes a mix of worry and defensiveness. Porter, if you're here to cause trouble, stop it now. We've had enough drama. Drama? I let out a bitter laugh, feeling heat rise to my face. You call forging grandfather's will drama? I found the real will, Mother. This mansion belongs to me. Grandfather left it to me, not to you or Father. They both froze as if time itself had stopped. My father's brow furrowed, but I caught a flicker of panic in his eyes. My mother clutched his hand, her red-painted nails digging into his skin. What are you talking about, Porter? She asked, her voice trembling but striving for calm. A will? Where did you get such a ridiculous story? I opened the folder, pulled out the copy of the will, and placed it on the glass coffee table between us. This is grandfather's will, drafted 7 years ago, stating clearly that the mansion at 1427 Oakwood Lane is mine. But you submitted a forged will to the court to claim ownership. I have proof. Handwriting analysis, property records, everything is here. I slid the folder toward them, my voice firm but my heart aching. My lawyer, Patricia, is finalizing the paperwork. I'm giving you 1 month to pack up and leave. If you don't, I'll take this to court. The air in the room grew thick. My father stared at the folder but didn't touch it, his hands clenched, knuckles whitening. You dare threaten your own family? He roared, his voice echoing through the vast room. After everything we've done for you, this company, this house, it's all for the family. Family? I cut in, my voice shaking with anger. Family is when you slap me in front of everyone, when Mother always takes Knox's side even though he does nothing but boast, when you lie to me, stealing the legacy grandfather left me. Don't talk to me about family, Father. My mother burst into tears, but I wasn't sure if they were tears of remorse or panic. She sank onto the sofa, covering her face with her hands. Porter, you don't understand, she whispered. We did it for the company, for the family legacy. If we hadn't taken control of the house, everything could have fallen apart. Fallen apart, I repeated, my voice bitter. The company is still running, Mother, but you chose to deceive me instead of telling the truth. I don't want to hear excuses anymore. 1 month, that's the time I'm giving you. My father stepped closer, his eyes burning with fury. You think you can win, Porter? You think the courts will side with you against the Hammond family? We have money, connections. You're nothing but a traitor. I met his gaze, unflinching. If you believe in your money and connections, go ahead and try. But I have the truth, and I won't stop. I turned and walked out of the room, feeling as if I'd shed a heavy burden but also lost a part of myself. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. It was Patricia. Porter, I just got more documents from the analyst. The signature on the forged will isn't just different from your grandfather's, it shows signs of digital alteration. This is incredibly strong evidence. Do you want me to start preparing the lawsuit now? I glanced back at the mansion one last time, its glowing windows a reminder of the years I thought I belonged here. Not yet, Patricia, I said. Give them 1 month. If they don't leave, we'll go to court. I hung up, started the car, and drove away. Anger still burned within me, but it was mixed with a strange sensation, as if I were reclaiming myself piece by piece. My parents could be angry, they could deny it, but they knew they were wrong. I saw it in my mother's panicked eyes, in the way my father clenched his fist to hide his trembling. They wouldn't fight, not because they didn't want to, but because they knew the truth was on my side. But as I drove through the familiar streets of Winnetka, a new question gnawed at me. If my parents were willing to forge a will to take the mansion, what else had they hidden? The company, with its so-called cash flow shortage they blamed on me, was it really struggling? Or was that just an excuse to pressure me into selling my penthouse? I gripped the steering wheel, suspicion igniting like a small flame growing stronger. I knew I had to dig deeper, and I wouldn't do it alone. In the days following my confrontation with my parents, I lived like a ghost. The penthouse, once my sanctuary, now felt like an empty shell where I spent hours staring at Chicago's skyline, trying to piece together the fragments of truth. The Winnetka mansion, the forged will, my father's slap, they were all parts of a larger puzzle, but I still couldn't see the full picture. My father's words about money and connections echoed in my mind, a warning that my family was hiding more than I'd uncovered. Then a new suspicion cut through me like a blade. The family company, with hundreds of millions in annual revenue, couldn't possibly be short on cash to pay employee bonuses. It didn't add up. Not at all. I recalled Christmas Eve when my father pressured me to sell my penthouse to cover the shortfall. Knox, with his smug smile, hadn't said a word about the finances despite being the CFO. If the company was truly struggling, why was Knox so nonchalant? Why was Clara, his wife, flaunting a brand new diamond necklace at the party while our employees faced the prospect of no bonuses? Something was wrong, and I was determined to find the truth. I called Patricia, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and resolve. "Patricia, I need your help with something else. I think there's an issue with the company's finances. My father said we're short on cash, but that doesn't make sense. Revenue is up 15% this year, and we just signed a major deal with a supermarket chain. I want to investigate where the money's really going." Patricia, as always, grasped the situation instantly. "What are you suspecting, Porter? Someone's tampering with the company's funds?" I took a deep breath, the image of Knox sitting smugly at the party flashing in my mind. "I'm not sure, but I want to start with Knox. He's the CFO. If something's off, he has to know." "All right," Patricia replied, her tone sharp. "I'll contact an independent auditor I trust. We'll need access to the company's books. Do you still have authority in the company, or has your father officially fired you?" "He said he did," I replied bitterly. "But I'm still a shareholder. I have the right to request financial reports." "Perfect," Patricia said. "Send me every document you have and I'll get started. But Porter, if you're right and someone's doing something shady, this could get messy. Are you ready for the consequences?" I looked out the window where the city lights glimmered like whispers of truth. "I'm ready, Patricia. I'm tired of being lied to." Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia and I worked tirelessly. She introduced me to Henry, a seasoned auditor with salt and pepper hair and eyes sharp as knives. Henry wasn't one for small talk. He got straight to business, asking me to provide every financial report, contract, and bank transaction I could access from the company. Luckily, I still had access to the internal system, despite my father likely assuming I wouldn't dare touch it after his slap on Christmas Eve. Each night, I sat in my apartment poring over hundreds of pages of documents Henry sent. The numbers, charts, and transaction logs were a labyrinth. But I didn't give up. I wasn't a financial expert like Knox, but I knew enough to spot irregularities. One evening, as neon city lights spilled across my desk, I found a suspicious transaction. $250,000 transferred from the company's bonus fund to a company called Bright Horizon Consulting. The name was unfamiliar despite my decade with the family business. A quick online search turned up nothing. No website, no address, nothing. A shell company. I called Henry immediately. "Did you see this transaction? $250,000 to Bright Horizon Consulting. It shows up 3 times this year, totaling $750,000. What is this company?" Henry paused, then replied, his voice low and tense. Porter, I was looking at those transactions too. Bright Horizon isn't a partner of your company. I checked. It's registered under a familiar name. Clara Hammond. Clara, Knox's wife. My heart pounded like it might explode. Her? She doesn't work for the company. Why is her name tied to this money? There's more, Henry continued. I found 3 other companies, all shells, registered under Clara or her associates. In total, over $2 million has been siphoned from the bonus fund to these accounts over the past 2 years, and Knox, as CFO, approved every transaction. I sank into my chair, feeling the ground crumble beneath me. Knox and Clara. They weren't just living lavishly under the guise of family stability. They were embezzling company money, funds meant for the bonuses of employees who dedicated their lives to us. Rage surged, but it was laced with a deep ache. Knox, my brother, the one my mother always protected, had betrayed not just me but our grandfather's legacy. I called Patricia, my voice shaking with fury. Patricia, we have proof. Knox and Clara have been embezzling over $2 million through shell companies. I want to bring this to light. Patricia sighed over the phone. Porter, this is a serious accusation. If we go public, it won't just affect Knox and Clara. It could tank the company, the stock could plummet, and your family's reputation. Reputation? I cut in, my voice icy. My family destroyed its reputation when they forged the will, when they let Knox and Clara steal from our employees. I don't care about reputation anymore, Patricia. I want justice. Patricia agreed to contact a federal prosecutor she knew. Over the next few days, Henry and his team dug deeper, uncovering more evidence. Emails between Knox and Clara, forged invoices, and international bank transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Each piece of evidence was like a dagger, but it strengthened my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for myself, but for the employees robbed of their bonuses and for my grandfather who built this company from nothing. One morning, as I reviewed Henry's latest report, my phone buzzed. It was Knox. I hesitated but answered. His voice came through, smooth as ever but tinged with strain. Porter, what are you doing? I heard you're digging through the company's books. Are you trying to destroy the family? I let out a bitter laugh, a storm raging in my chest. Destroy? You and Clara did that when you embezzled $2 million. Don't play innocent, Knox. I have proof and I won't stop. There was silence on the other end. Then Knox spoke, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You don't understand, Porter. It's more complicated than you think. Meet me and we can talk. No, I said, my voice firm. The time for talking is over. You'll pay for what you've done. I hung up, my heart still racing. Knox could try to persuade me, but I knew the truth. This time I wouldn't let my family drag me down again. With the evidence in hand, Patricia and I prepared to report to the federal authorities. But deep down, I knew this battle was about more than justice. It would shatter what was left of my family, and I had to be ready for that. In the weeks following the tense call with Knox, I lived like someone walking a tightrope, suspended between truth and pain. Each morning I woke with a strange mix of emotions, relief that the secrets were unraveling, but a heavy weight knowing that my family, or what remained of it, was crumbling piece by piece. Patricia and Henry worked relentlessly, handing over all evidence of Knox and Clara's embezzlement to the federal prosecutor. I didn't attend the meetings with the FBI, but every time Patricia called, her voice carried an increasing strain, as if she too felt the gravity of what we were doing. Porter, she said one rainy afternoon, the FBI has officially opened an investigation. Knox and Clara have no way out. I sat in my penthouse, gazing at Chicago shrouded in a gray curtain of rain. The neon lights from the skyscrapers flickered, like whispers from a world moving on, heedless of the wound in my heart. I thought of Knox, my younger brother with his smug smile, always pampered by our parents. I thought of Clara with her extravagant dresses and cold, piercing eyes, as if she were born to stand above everyone. They had siphoned over $2 million from the company's bonus fund, money meant for employees who had devoted their lives to our grandfather's legacy. Rage flared within me, but it was laced with a profound ache. They hadn't just betrayed the company, they had betrayed me, our grandfather, and the very Hammond name we once took pride in. One morning, as I brewed coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Turn on the TV, local news channel now." I rushed to switch on the television, and there was Knox on the screen, his face pale, eyes dodging the camera as he was led out of the company office, hands cuffed behind his back. Clara walked beside him, her usually impeccable blonde hair disheveled, her eyes wild with panic like a cornered animal. The news anchor spoke in a calm but cutting tone. Knox Hammond, CFO of Hammond Foods, and his wife Clara Hammond have been charged with embezzling over $2 million from the company's bonus fund through shell companies. Both have been barred from company management and face serious criminal charges. I stood there, the coffee cup growing cold in my hand, feeling as if the world had slowed to a crawl. Part of me wanted to shout in triumph. Justice had been served. But a larger part felt hollow. Knox was my brother. Despite what he'd done, despite how much I despised his arrogance, he was the boy who used to play basketball with me in the backyard, who shared naive dreams of running the company together. Now, he was a criminal, and I was the one who had pushed him to that edge. My phone buzzed again. It was my mother. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen, but I answered. Her voice trembled, stripped of the regal confidence of the woman who once stood in the Winnetka mansion like a queen. "Porter," she said, almost a whisper. "What have you done?" "Knox. He's been arrested. You can't let your brother go to prison." I gripped the phone, heat rushing to my head. "Mother," I replied, my voice cold but shaking. "Knox and Clara stole from the company, from the employees, from the legacy grandfather left. I didn't do this, they did it to themselves." "But you can stop it," she cried, her voice breaking with desperation. "You can tell your lawyer, the FBI, that it was a mistake. We're family, Porter." "Family?" I let out a bitter laugh, pain surging like a wave. "You call it family when you and Father forged Grandfather's will? When you always took Knox's side even when he was wrong? When Father slapped me in front of everyone just for defending what's mine? Don't talk to me about family, Mother. I've repaid your upbringing by saving the company from Knox and Clara. That's all I owe you." There was silence on the other end, only the faint sound of her sobbing. I hung up, my heart heavy. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't keep living in the shadow of their lies. Meanwhile, my parents quietly vacated the Winnetka mansion, meeting the 1-month deadline I'd set. Patricia informed me they had moved to a smaller estate in Lake Forest, another family property far more modest than the gray stone castle they'd once claimed. I didn't visit or call them, but one evening I received a handwritten letter from my mother, her script shaky on the page. She wrote, "Porter, I'm sorry. Your father and I were wrong to favor Knox, to think that keeping the family together meant sacrificing you. We've lost you, and now we've lost Knox too. I don't know how to fix this." Reading those words, a wave of emotions crashed over me. Anger, pain, and a flicker of pity. Part of me wanted to drive to Lake Forest, to hug her and say everything would be okay. But the larger part, the one scarred too deeply, held me back. I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, and told myself that distance was the only way to heal. They might recognize their mistakes, but the truth couldn't erase years of injustice, lies, and the scars they'd left on me. A few days later, Patricia called with an update. Knox and Clara had been permanently banned from company management, and criminal charges were moving forward. "They could face prison time," she said, her voice a mix of seriousness and empathy. "The company's in chaos, but the board has appointed an interim CFO. They want you back, Porter, to help stabilize things." I shook my head, though she couldn't see it over the phone. "No, Patricia. I've done enough for the company. I exposed the truth, and that's my final gift to them. I need time to find my own path." As I hung up, I looked out the window where the city lights still twinkled like scattered stars. I thought of my grandfather, his promise about the Winnetka mansion, and the values he'd taught me. justice, honesty, and compassion. Knox and Clara had chosen their path, and my parents had paid the price for their blind favoritism. As for me, I knew I had to move forward, not for revenge, but to build something better from these ruins. After months of chaos, I stood before the Winnetka mansion for the first time since my parents left. The house remained as majestic as in my memories, its gray stone walls and stained glass windows glinting under the early spring sunlight. But now, it was no longer a symbol of family pride. It was a reminder of lies and wounds. I had reclaimed it not with money or power, but with truth. Yet standing there, breathing the crisp March air, I knew I didn't want to keep it for myself. This mansion, my grandfather's legacy, deserved a greater purpose. The idea came to me during a sleepless night as I sat in my penthouse flipping through my grandfather's handwritten letters. In one, he wrote, "Wealth isn't for hoarding, Porter. It's a tool to help others, to build a better world." His words lit a path forward. The Winnetka mansion, with its vast spaces and rich history, could become a community center, a place offering free food, job training, and hope to those struggling in life. It would be my way of honoring my grandfather and healing myself. I called Patricia, who had become not just my lawyer but a true ally in this journey. "You want to turn the mansion into a community center?" she asked, her voice tinged with surprise but brimming with excitement. "That's a big idea, Porter. You'll need a team, funding, and a long-term plan." "I know," I replied, determination coursing through my veins. "I'll sell some of my assets if I have to, but I want to do this. Not just for grandfather, but for the people who need it." In the months that followed, I poured my heart into the project. I hired a team of architects to renovate the mansion, transforming the opulent living room into a food distribution area, my grandfather's library into a classroom for vocational training, and the sprawling garden into a community space with wooden benches and vegetable patches. Every day I was at the site, sleeves rolled up, working alongside the crew, overseeing every detail. There were moments of exhaustion, but each brick laid, each wall repainted felt like a step away from the past and toward something new. One afternoon, while clearing out the library to prepare for the first classes, I found a small wooden box tucked behind an old bookshelf. My heart raced as I recognized the familiar carving on its surface, my grandfather's name, James Hammond. I opened it to find an old silver ring engraved with the word truth and a handwritten note. My grandfather's faded but clear script read, "Porter, truth is the flame that lights the way. Keep it burning no matter the cost." I clutched the ring, feeling as if he were there, reminding me of the values he instilled: honesty, justice, and compassion. Tears rolled down my cheeks, not from sorrow, but from a connection to him, as if he were smiling from somewhere beyond. The ring became my driving force. I wore it on my finger, a reminder that I was doing the right thing. As the project neared completion, I partnered with local charities to ensure the center had resources: food from donors, volunteer teachers for the vocational courses, and even former Hammond Foods employees who had worked under my grandfather. They named the center James Flame, a name I didn't choose but felt perfectly fitting. The opening day was a rare sunny one in Chicago's spring. Hundreds of locals gathered in the mansion's garden, now vibrant with vegetable patches and colorful benches. I stood before the crowd, scissors in hand to cut the ribbon, a mix of nerves and pride swelling within me. As the red ribbon fell, applause erupted, and I saw unfamiliar but radiant faces: single mothers, laid-off workers, children running with carefree smiles. For the first time in years, I felt I belonged somewhere, not because of blood, but because of a greater purpose. During the ceremony, an elderly man with silver hair and a slight limp approached me. He introduced himself as Harold, a former Hammond Foods employee who worked with my grandfather in the company's early days. "You're like him," Harold said, his eyes warm with sincerity. "James always believed business wasn't just about profit. It was about doing good for the community. Once he used his own money to pay employees when the company struggled. You're carrying on that legacy, Porter." Harold's words touched something deep within me. I felt a healing, not because my wounds were gone, but because I realized I didn't have to carry them forever. My grandfather had left me not just a house, but a mission. Standing in the garden, watching people collect free food boxes and sign up for vocational classes, I knew I'd found a new purpose, one unbound by my family's lies or favoritism. Months after the opening, I sat in my modest Chicago office, a far cry from the lavish penthouse I once called home. I had sold the penthouse and my entire stake in Hammond Foods. The decision wasn't easy, but as I signed the final papers, I felt a freedom I'd never known. The company, with its memories of pressure, favoritism, and secrets, was now just part of my past. I was no longer Porter Hammond, marketing director of a food empire. I was Porter, an independent consultant working with charities and small businesses to help them grow sustainably. Every day I spent time at James Flame, working with volunteers and listening to the stories of those who came to the center. There was Maria, a single mother who took an auto repair course and now had a steady job. There was Jamal, a high school dropout learning to code, dreaming of a startup. These small stories warmed my heart. I no longer felt the pressure to prove myself to my family or live in their shadow. I was living true to my values, the ones my grandfather planted when I was a boy. Occasionally, I received texts from my mother. She wrote about their life in Lake Forest, how my father had taken up gardening to pass the time, how they tried to reach Knox, who awaited trial. I read the messages but didn't reply. It wasn't that I couldn't forgive, it was that I needed time to heal. Maybe one day I'd see them again, but not now. Now I needed to live for myself and for those who needed me. I stood at my office window, watching the city shift under the glow of dusk. My grandfather's silver ring, now on my finger, glinted in the light. It was a reminder that I'd chosen the right path, not the easy one, but the honest one. I smiled, freedom flowing through every breath, knowing that no matter how painful the past, I had found a new life, one worth living.